Hey guys, today I want to talk about a common fault I see in deadlifting, mostly when we're doing repeat reps and returning the bar back down to the floor, and how it relates to other movements that we do and the importance of getting the sequencing of how we move correct. It's not just a matter of can we get in position A and B, but the path that we take between those 2 points plays just as an important role as getting into the right positions. So let's dive into it. Okay, so you'll notice in these first couple of reps that I'm initiating the downward movement by sending my hips back, and the knees are staying soft until the bar is clear of the knees. So hips go back, bar is clear, so the knees start to bend. On my second set of reps, I initiate the movement by immediately sending my knees forward. It's a very slight bend, but it's still a bend right there. Then the hips are going back, but not until the knees have pushed forward first. All right, so if we look at those two different examples, on the first 3 reps, you can see that my hips are shifting back first, and therefore I'm loading the glutes and the hamstrings right away. And the second example, and the one that I see most commonly, as the athlete is returning the bar to the floor, they start to bend the knees first. So now we're loading the quads versus the posterior chain. And this all relates back to a concept that I learned from Kelly Starrett and watching several of his videos back in the early days of CrossFit, of that tissues that are loaded first in a movement are also loaded maximally in that movement. You can hear him say it for yourself.
Straight and tall, big finish, the bar is starting to release, but I'm thinking about recovering my hip function first. Remember our kind of mantra about tissue load ordering or tissue sequencing, and that is the tissues that get loaded first in range are loaded maximally in range. So if I load a neutral spine, there's the relationship. I load my...
So when we initiate by pushing the hips back, we're loading the glutes and the hamstrings. And that's what we're going to be our primary movers in the movement, which we know from a deadlift is what we're trying to target there is our posterior chain. When we initiate by pushing the knees forward first, now we're loading up the quadriceps. And that's not the muscle group that we're trying to target with this movement. It's also not the muscle group that's going to set us up to do the next rep well. If we take this same movement pattern and we apply it to rowing, here's another common fault that you've probably seen. Okay, so watch a few strokes here, and you'll notice that when I return to the flywheel, the first thing that happens is I hinge forward from my hip, right there. Right there. On my second set of strokes, now I'm initiating by bending my knees first. Right there. Right there. Just like in our deadlift, I could initiate by sending or by hinging over with my chest first in the row, just like we're doing in the deadlift, hinging over. Or I could initiate my return stroke on the rower by bending my knees first and pulling myself in with my hip flexors. When I initiate the movement with my knees, just like we talked about the deadlift, I'm loading up the quads. Now my quads are going to be the dominant muscle group in that movement. Whereas when I initiate by hinging at the hip first, now the glutes and the hamstrings are going to be the dominant muscle group in that movement pattern. And just like in the deadlift, we know that rowing is driven by the posterior chain, or it's more efficient and more powerful when done so. So that's what we want to be aiming for. So long story short, when we are moving, it's not just about our start position and our end position, but it's also about how we get between the two. That dictates a lot about the adaptation that that movement creates in our bodies. Another great example is the air squat. This is also why in the air squat we initiate with hips back. If we initiate by pushing the knees forward first, we're now recruiting more of the quadriceps and less of the glutes and hamstrings. Doesn't mean that it's wrong necessarily, it just depends on what your goals are for the movement. What is it that you're trying to target? Why are you doing this movement? What are you hoping to gain by doing this movement? So start paying more attention to the fine details of your movement patterns and see if you're actually achieving what it is that you're setting out to achieve.